I want you to think about something you really want, something that if you had it would make you happy. Now think about something historically you wanted really badly. I mean, spent hours on hours researching and desiring, feeling that this would make me happy. Might be a car, house, phone, watch, clothes, job, etc. Add anything in there. How long did that thing make you happy? How do you treat that thing now? Generally, the answer is it made me happy for a few weeks, maybe a month, but now I want something else. That is hedonic adaptation. Everything that happens in our lives we try to adapt to. That's our natural response. And it's helped us survive the harshest of environments for thousands of years and conquer the globe. But it also impacts our happiness. This is because when we want, need or desire something, that urge to obtain it can be an incredible driver. But when we have it, our sense of achievement, happiness and fulfillment only lasts a short period of time because of this concept of hedonic adaptation. Even things we think will hugely impact our happiness, like owning a home, we just adjust to it and it gradually has much less of an impact on our feelings of happiness, as we then find another thing to go on and want or feel that we need. This is the same for bad things though, like the death of a spouse. Of course, this impacts some people more than others, but generally, we will adjust back to a certain level of happiness over time. It's been difficult to measure this scientifically due to the subjectivity involved in asking people to scale their level of happiness. Obviously, this is affected by a number of different things, like what you were doing that day, the wording of the question, and what you were actually doing before the question was asked. So it's really difficult to make an accurate depiction of how people are feeling. Early evidence that well-being adapts to circumstances came from a classic study. This was by Brickman, Coates and Yanov Bullman in 1971. They found that lottery winners' happiness levels matched that of control participants within a year of winning, suggesting that happiness levels adapt to the increased wealth over time. They also found that accident victims who experienced paraplegia adapted to a large extent to the paraplegia that they experienced, although happiness did not recover completely to the level of experienced by control participants. But this striking study suggests that intensely joyous or traumatic experiences often have only a limited effect on long-term well-being. This idea of a baseline level of happiness, so to speak, is something that I'm not sure how I feel about it. Evidence does suggest that the level of happiness is hereditable in some way, and that well-being is related to stable personality traits. But I don't generally like this idea of a baseline level of happiness because people go through horrible experiences that affect them for the rest of their lives. And I think this may be because the daily impact of this experience in terms of their memories of that event comes back. So, for example, with PTSD, this leads to recurring nightmares and certain things taking you back to that event and making you feel as awful today as you did then. It's sad that this doesn't happen, though, the other way around with happy events. Say, the most amazing day of your life. Imagine regularly dreaming of that, different smells and things taking you back to that, and increasing your daily level of happiness. It doesn't happen to the same intensity that it does with, say, PTSD on the other end of the spectrum. Generally, though, I suppose it could be argued that we have a baseline, but daily habits, behaviours, thoughts and cognitive processes can lead to that increasing and raising over time, consistently. The idea of a baseline level of happiness can, for some, feel incredibly debilitating, especially for those whose general feelings of happiness in life are quite low. This says, of course, that some things may make you happy, but you will return to a general state. While I think there is some credence to the idea of a baseline level of happiness, I don't think it's the be-all and end-all, and I think it can be consistently changed. Engaging in things like healthy habits daily, therapy that impacts your thinking throughout your life, and positive relationships mean that each day you're able to improve and maintain a higher level of happiness than that baseline may previously have been, or than your normal is. Self-care and self-love is a daily habit. It can't just be a short phase that solves all your problems for the rest of your life. Each day we do become a different person than we were yesterday. And so as we become different For example, through science shows neuroplasticity and different pathways being created in your mind. And also, obviously, that means that we behave differently. That will impact our baseline level of happiness day to day. I tend to see genetics on a continuum. For example, with height, you might have a continuum. There might be the higher end that you grow to 7 foot, and the lower end you grow to 5 foot. And there might be a baseline in there somewhere, the average height that you will likely reach. But if you eat the best nutrients and do everything that's needed to grow as much as possible, I think you will be on the higher end of that continuum. So while you have a baseline that you would tend to reach, if you do the healthy habits, the good things, you can get to the higher end. You may have a baseline of happiness that might be, say, low, for example, and you might tend to have a tendency towards depression, anxiety, etc. But if you engage in healthy habits, therapy that might be able to change your cognitive processes and ways of thinking, have positive relationships, that will mean that your baseline level of happiness is consistently higher because of these healthy, regular habits. So what are some tips for managing hedonic adaptation? Maintain your standards of living. When your income grows, spread that growth over time and distribute it over a number of areas so it doesn't have a fleeting impact. And instead it's a win that can be had many times over, a number of days, weeks, months, etc. Minimalism and intentional living is really important. Knowing what you need and become happy with a certain level of living, and try to stick to that as much as possible. Whether that's eating out once per week, having a budget of £300 a month or something like that, buying second-hand clothes, buy a functional and effective car rather than the ones you think your mates will most appreciate. And set your values and goals and stick to them, no matter your increased income. Step off the hedonic treadmill. Pull back from that status game. The greatest freedom is not worrying about what others think about your status. It's impossible to keep up with what you think others expect of you. What you buy says something about you, of course, in our society. And it's hard not to care about that. You can care, but set your goals and values so you care in a different way. Focus on what you buy, saying something like, I prioritise functionality, I prioritise youthfulness over superficial things like statuses, names and brands. Focus on the process is another important tip. If our focus is on a big goal that we think will finally make us happy, then generally I have some bad news for you. Instead, we need to focus on the process of achieving that goal, the little wins, little improvements, day by day, as we develop into the daily person that we want and aspire to be. As the old awful adage goes, but it is true, life's about the journey and not the destination, because that destination will not bring you the long-term sense of satisfaction and contentment with life that you think it will. There will always be another goal to achieve, thing to have or act to do. Do not wish away the time between goals. The time saving for a house, training for a marathon, or preparing for a job interview. Enjoy that process. Cherish that progress, for that is life itself. Thanks for listening, and if you like the video, please like, subscribe, and there'll be more content coming soon.